Welcome back guys to this training. In this second video, we are going to be discussing on how to change the port of our Apache, right? So we'll be discussing on how to change the port of our Apache, right? So to do that, let's go to the control panel of our XAMPP. All right, okay, this is the control panel of our XAMPP. So maybe during the process, maybe when you will try to start up this control panel, that is putting on the Apache and the MySQL, maybe it's not coming up, or it's not on, and it's not showing this gray color. So there are some factors that might be contributing. There might be some factors that might be contributing to that, right? So as you can see from this particular port, by default this particular port normally comes with a port number of 80, right? So that is that is the port number that most of all these our softwares normally comes with, right? Because most of them do run on this XAMPP softwares, right? So the reason why maybe you try to put it on and it's not coming up, maybe there might be some conflict. Maybe there might be another software that is also running on this particular port 80. All right, so by the time there is a conflict between those those software and this XAMPP that we just installed, so you might be having some difficulty because there will be conflicts, right? You might be having some difficulty when you try to put it on. So that is why we will be changing this particular port number to a different number. So let me show you what I mean. Let me go back to my local host. Okay, let me go back to my local host. Then by the time I type localhost, let me just type localhost. Let me type localhost 80. Let me type localhost 80, right? So by the time I enter, it will bring me directly here, right? Instead of writing a localhost slash dashboard this way. So by the time you type a localhost, then you put in this port number that is by default. This XAMPP normally comes with a port number of 80. Okay, by the time you type on it, it will bring you directly to this our dashboard. Okay, so what you want to do now, but in a situation whereby you try to put on your XAMPP and you discover that it's not turning on, so what that means is that your XAMPP is maybe is conflicting with other software that is also making use of that same port. So in order to avoid this, so what we will be doing that we are going back to our control panel. So by the time we get to our control panel, for you to change this particular port, all you need to do is to turn off this Apache and MySQL. All right, just put it off. Okay, then you put it off. Okay, now it has been turned off. So the next thing to do is to go to this config, right? Click on this config. Then alright, so all you have to do is to select this Apache http.conf, right? So click on it. Alright, by the time you click on it, it will bring you direct to this particular notepad. So just go down. Alright, so on this particular place you see this listen 80. So this is that port number by default that this our XAMPP came along with, right? So by the time you install this XAMPP on your window, maybe there might be some other software that are also operating on this same particular port, right? So there might be some conflicts, right? So in order to avoid this particular conflict, even if maybe your own is not having this issue at this moment. But I do advise you change it, because somewhere somehow you might install a software that might be operating with the same port with this xampp, right? So in order to avoid such occurrence, so I do advise you change it to something else, right? So what we'll do, this 80, then you can make it 8080, right? So let me add another 80 to it, another 80 to it. Okay, so still go down, okay. You can further this server name, right? So this the server that is the server, the local host, right? You can see is also bearing the same port, right? So you can also change this to 8080 also. Make sure that it's the same number that you are using. All right, make sure you are using the same number. Okay, always make sure that you are using the same number. Sorry. Okay, make sure you are using the same number. All right, so let me confirm if it's the same thing that I'm using. All right, 8080. So on this lesson, that is this lesson, make sure you change it to whatsoever number that you want to make use of, right? Apart from this default number, right? Then still go down. All right, it's the same number that you are using. So all you need to do is to click on Ctrl X, right, to save. Then save. All right, then let's go back. So let's go back, let's refresh. By the time we refresh, you will see that this page will be out. All right, so let me refresh so that you will see. All right, so our port has been changed. So what this means is that this particular local host, this browser already know that the port that this local host is using is 80. So by the time we change this 80 to 8080, so this browser no longer recognize this local host anymore. So that is why you are having this error message, right? So by the time you see this error message when you try to refresh, then know that you are on the right track. So what we need to do now, so let's include the new port that we just changed, that is localhost dot, that is double dot 8080, right? So click on enter. So let's refresh this particular page. All right, so by the time you refresh, you can now see that our localhost, now we have changed our localhost port to 8080, right? We have changed the local port to 8080. So let me also show it to you on the port, our port. So as you can see from this port, we are now having a 8080, right? So that is how to change your port, right, in order to avoid a conflict from other software. So with this, in the next class, we are going to be installing our WordPress on this our local host, right? All right, stay tuned guys. Bye bye.